All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to GuildifyCon 2023. I am your moderator, Rachel Nee Kirk, and I am the number one Irish author. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I am so excited to moderate this panel. Today's topic of this panel is It Takes Two, co-authoring the pros and cons, things you do again, and areas to avoid. So, as we get started here, let's go ahead and have our amazing panelists introduce themselves. And let's start out with Steve.
Hey, I am Steve Bollier. I write as Jamie Castle. Steve owns Athon Books. Jamie writes books. I have done a lot of co-writing projects, and so I think I'm qualified for this, but we'll see when we talk to everyone else. Happy to be here. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have you, so thanks for being here as well. Damien, let's shoot over to you.
Hey, Damien Hansen here, Bymort. I put my co-author's name in the parentheses. So yeah, I'm not, that's not my pen name or anything. I hope everyone gets that right away. But yep, author of Bymort.
Excellent. Rachel, down to you.
Hey, I author as R.A. Cooper. I'm co-author with Aoife over here as who's Ellen Hughes. And together we are co-authoring Wolf and Flame, which is a series that's already been released. And we also have a Royal Road that I'll let her introduce as well.
All right, awesome. Aoife, over to you.
Hi, yeah, I'm Aoife. My pen name's L.M. Hughes, and my lovely co-author is Rachel. And yeah, so we've written a series together, Wolf and Flame, and we've just started on Royal Road today with Hunter Origins.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you, everyone, and thanks for being here today. So let's go ahead and get started with the first question that I have for you all. And it's interesting because we have two co-authors on the same panel, so I'm kind of curious to see, your guys' different perspectives on this. But the first question I have for you all is, what have been the pros in your co-authoring experience? And has there been one major highlighting moment within the process that comes to mind? And let's go ahead and start down with Aoife, actually.
I think probably the biggest pro is just a newfound, basically, best friendship to start off, the support, the fun. I think from my journey starting out on my own before I kind of joined the writing group with Rachel, it was pretty fraught and quite, I was very nervous to do it. So I think probably the top thing is just having that support there and learning a lot as well from Rachel throughout the whole process over the last couple of years. It's been great.
So I don't know. Yeah.
Rachel, over to you.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'd kind of echo what Aoife had mentioned. I think we're very fortunate to have found each other kind of earlier on in our author careers, because we got to learn the whole process together. And so we had each other's back, each other's cheerleaders, encouragement throughout the whole process. And even like during those times of if we were like struggling, we could understand and kind of provide that support with each other. And so I think we kept going with that.
Nice. I like that. Okay, let's go up to Steve.
I need that question one more time because I've been thinking of answers for things that what's
Sure.
Your favorite part? What's the best part?
What were the pros in the co-authoring experience, and was there any real highlights?
Yeah, I got lost in the lowlights as I was thinking of the opposite question. But so for me, I think that authoring is a tremendously solo endeavor. The author community, as connected as we might be on the internet, it's still just you alone in a room. Before this, I was a pastor for years. I toured in a metal band, so I always had people around me. And so when I started co-writing, I found that camaraderie, I think, that I really needed. It's one thing to, comment back and forth on people's Facebook posts, but it's another thing altogether to have actual phone calls, video calls, and a friendship And so for me, the biggest pro is just having somebody there with you kind of doing what is really a hard thing, and that is writing a good book.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, Damien, over to you.
Yeah, I was looking at that comment there. That's pretty funny. I need to make it to one of the conventions there. Yeah, the biggest pro, and this was mentioned before, biggest pro is definitely support, because it is a very individual thing usually when you write your stories. And it's so easy to give up on things that maybe you shouldn't, to pull things out of those stories that maybe you shouldn't. Having a peer looking at your work alongside you as you're writing it, having someone who can give you that daily encouragement, but also that daily professional eye, who can tell you when things aren't working and when things are, it's invaluable. It's actually quite amazing working with another person on these stories, because there's so much back and forth that you just don't have otherwise.
Nice. I like that. So that's going to lead into the next question that I have is, was there any cons for you in the experience? And was there ever a moment where you just were like, you know what, I want to walk away from the process? And if you got to that point, what did you do to get over it? So Damien, let's stay with you on this.
Cons in the process. When you get so closely interlinked with someone on a project, there will be disagreements. It becomes almost like a marriage, really. You know, I mean, there are days where you're at each other's throats over something that you are absolutely positive that you're correct on, and they are also absolutely positive they're correct on. And yeah, it can get you pretty flustered. But fortunately, because the partnership is so close, that can all eventually be talked through, and even it can even lead to large improvements in the story. A lot of times when there's a huge disagreement, there is some place in the middle that's better that you can work your way into.
I like that. That was kind of actually what I was about to follow up with as you were talking about it. Was there times where, hey, I think this, you know what? We're not going to go with either of them, and we're going to come up with this thing together.
Yeah, absolutely. You end up, as you're bickering over it, both of your minds are just kind of, you know, the gears are rolling, and you start thinking about, wait a minute, what about this? And at the same time, yeah, your co-author, your partner is doing the same thing. You know, what about this? And they're like, you propose at the same time, and then that leads to an even better idea. So the con is also a pro in so many ways.
Nice. I like that. Rachel, let's jump down to you.
So one of the things, and if you hear any noise in the background, the toddler has ventured upstairs, so out of his nap time room. But so I'll be here kind of quick. But I'll say that one of the things is like we kind of pick up each other's voice over time as we've written close together. So sometimes one of the cons can be like we're so used to like kind of mimicking each other's voice and getting along with it that we may not catch the lingo difference, because Aoife's from Ireland, and so there's some colloquialisms that come across. But I happen to have talked with her almost every day for a couple of years that I've picked up on them. Like I just kind of automatically understand it in my own head. So.
Nice. Aoife, over to you.
Yeah, that just reminds me. Only recently it came up on because we have a shared draft. We do everything through Google Docs, and so there's comments left and highlights. And I think in my mind, like I knew this was coming up, but I was like, oh, it's just a rough draft. It'll come out. So it was like something like, you know, he can go and shag off or whatever it was, and things do get lost in translation. But that's what Rachel was saying. She said, I actually just I translated it. I totally knew what it was. And I'm not picking them up as quickly anymore. So that, yeah, so the familiarity that we have, it's really hard for me to think of any cons, because we actually, there isn't any major conflicts. Neither of us ever kind of come, you know, like kind of dig the heels in and kind of go my way or the highway or anything like that. But it's more a case of like things like what Rachel said there, or what I sometimes, and it's probably like a quirk of my personality is that I may say nothing or I may say loads, and then I'm kind of like, just step back a little bit and like just make sure that there's balance between the two of us and that there's time management. I suppose one of my concerns is always just that I'm on top of things and I'm not like leaving too much to anybody else to have to do. I always kind of like want to be pulling my weight and doing my share. So I think that's just something that would be in my mind as well,
Yeah, I like that. I know, kind of like what Brian Norton was just saying. My editor is from the United Kingdom, and there's been plenty of comments in my manuscripts of like, is this an American thing? Because it's certainly not English grammar or anything else I've seen. So it's interesting there. And then you kind of alluded to when you're trying to co-author and the other person may have a different time scale of productivity or whatnot. So matching up, I like that. Okay, Steve, let's jump up to you.
Rhett Bruno is co-author of Aethon Books, and he and I write a lot together. And so he and I wrote a nonfiction book called Two Authors, One Book. You might get the implication there, but maybe not. He and I had 2 points in our book that I think were the primary takeaway. One was check your ego at the door. Like that's the biggest, I think, hang up that we get as authors co-authoring together. And then the second one was like define your roles. And I think that if those 2 things are really nailed down before a project starts, you really can suss out or push out some of those cons that might come along with it. But I had one that I had to walk away from. I've co-written, I don't know, 20 something books, and like my hands are in every book. Like I'm not slapping my name on it. I'm writing these books just like you guys are. And this author I was working with, he and I were just butting heads on every single thing that happened. And I have no ego. I'm like, fine, let's do it your way. But it was just like everything that we wrote. We finished the entire first book of the series. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. You can have it. And I don't need my name on it. Continue the series on your own. And we stayed friends. As a matter of fact, I consider him a good friend. But like, I think knowing when to walk away is actually like pretty important in co-authoring. Cons are you butt heads and it sucks.
Yeah. So I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, in that time frame when that happened, did that really stop you from considering future co-authorships, or did you continue?
Okay. Rhett and I had written something like 9 books together by that point. And so I was just, I had an idea for a project and somebody else shared the vision for it. And the book came out great. It was just after having written with Rhett and knowing how kind of easy, simple, fun it could be, I was not experiencing that same thing. So I just went, I don't want to do this anymore.
Okay. Let's go ahead and jump to one of our audience questions from Nemika, also known as Nick Boslow. How do you even consider co-authoring? Was it something that just happened, or was it planned? Did you kind of want to start with the co-authorship to begin with? And Aoife, let's go down to you.
It actually came about, as I say, myself and Rachel were in a writing group, and we were on like a Facebook group with loads of authors, and Vela was just about to launch. So I think it was back 2021. And it wasn't available here for authors in Ireland. And Rachel reached out to the group and was like, would anybody be interested in doing co-authoring? Especially if you're outside of the US, it'd be great to, that you could have the opportunity. So we started through that, and we're pretty much, the process that we started back then was kind of similar to what we do now, in that we use Google Docs and Zoom calls and things like that, but it evolved over time. But that's literally where we started, was basically writing the series for Royal Road, or sorry, not Royal Road, for Vela when it first started. So that's how we got started. So it was thanks to Rachel.
Well, thanks for jumping in on that, though. Answering the call.
I answered the call.
Yeah.
So Rachel, was that kind of your plan and your intent when you started out, was I want to start as a co-author, or did you have, solo ideas first?
Yeah. So I think what really drove it was the Vela, because it is a newer platform. I wasn't familiar with Royal Royal Road at the time, or other kind of similar web serial platforms. And so I figured it would be a good time to try to jump in. And then I was also interested, was there anything that I could learn from someone else and see, would something like this work out more of a long-term thing if possible? And just trying to expand that knowledge as well and keep that support going.
Nice. I like it. Steve, let's go up to you.
I have the sort of benefit of having Athons. So like writing to me is for fun. And so like my projects always start off with, this would be fun. So it's always like I find somebody who's writing in a similar way that I am. And, we've got connections with all the authors because of Athon. So it's really easy to go, hey, you write Assassins. I have this cool idea for an assassin. This will be fun. Let's write it together. When I first started writing, I'm probably like everyone else, dude. I've been writing books and short stories since I was like 7 or 8 years old. And I have unfinished manuscripts that are 195,000 words long that I wrote when I was in my teen years, and like just had no idea what to do, how to finish them, where they were going. And my first co-author project is something that's not even available anymore. I've rewritten it since then, but like I met a guy who played bass with me, and I said, I don't know, I saw that he wrote some books. I'm like, I've been trying to finish this book for years. And he's like, let's do it together. And that was it. That was the beginning of co-authoring. And I went, oh, this is way more fun than sitting in my room bashing out words that I don't know what to do with. Like Damien said, like there's this really great camaraderie when you have another person looking at your work going, this works, this doesn't work, this sucks, cut it. And then having the option to go back and forth with that, like that changes the whole dynamic of writing.
Absolutely. I love that. All right, Damien, over to you.
Yeah, the same stuff here. It just kind of happens. People that I've co-authored in the past with are Brent Meskey, Nolan Locke, and right now Joseph Phelps. And it's all author groups. You meet up with each other. You're talking every day about each other's stuff. You're reading each other's work. In the case of Joseph and I, we actually we were actually deliberating over a cover that we had seen, like a cover idea where it was just this guy just like punching a window. And we're like, how funny would it be to have a series where this guy's just walking around town, just busting all the windows, right? And we kind of sat down with that and we're like, wait a minute, why would he be doing that? Could we actually come up with a good reason for this? And it all that spitballing, suddenly these ideas came out and this whole concept came out, and it just intertwined and just happened. And that seems like that's how it's always worked for me. It's just people you like to read, that you're hanging out with, and you fall into a concept together, and you want to see what happens. You both want to see what happens, so you have to sit down at that point and start typing out the words.
Damien, does anyone ever get thrown through a window in Weimar?
Yeah, like, is there creative ways to get more points with how you destroy the window?
The window's not the main point, actually, but in the first arc, often he punches windows to gain kinetic energy, which in turn actually heals his wounds, which he tends to get a lot of because he just throws himself into combat. So
I only ask because like there's a word, defenestrator or defenestration. Are you familiar with that word? It was literally created. Yeah. It's the word that is used to like when you throw someone through the window. And I always think this is hilarious that like somebody had to come up with a word for
because it just happens so often.
Defenestration.
All right, so there's our word for the day. So for all those writers out there, try to throw it in, literally and figuratively. Okay, so Damien, let's stay with you on this next question from Kyle Wilkinson, who asked, is co-authoring based on a mutual connection, or does it start as someone suggesting y'all's writing styles mesh? Or I guess, did you yourself look for someone with a good mesh of style?
Well, that is a really good question, because before I before the idea even of Phelps and I co-authoring happened, there was a fan of a previous series who mentioned that us two particularly should write something together. And it was just kind of one of those aside things like, oh, look at this, haha, that's cool. And it was put aside. But apparently our writing styles were close enough that was suggested previously. And then what's the next part of the question? Sorry.
So is it based off the mutual connection, or does it
Yes.
start with the writing style?
Yeah, so it didn't start with the writing style, but someone did suggest that should happen. For us, I mean, we read each other's works and we enjoyed each other's stuff, and there was definitely a mutual connection, understanding, respect involved there. So as much of an answer as that is, that's my answer.
Yeah. Rachel, let's jump down to you, because it sounds like both you and Aoife really had both at the same time, where you guys were in a writing group, so you might have known styles and mutual connection at the same time. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think we'd both been on each other's launch teams for our individual books that we started off. So we had some familiarity with the writing styles in general. But one of the things that really kind of connected us is we were both interested in kind of mythology and legend. So that was one of the things that we knew we wanted to kind of write a series on. So we'd kind of push that way. And then Aoife, if you want to add anything to that, I'll let you.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly about our own individual products. And it's gas actually only recently when we had a beta feedback, that was one of the things of our current. So with 4 books into that series, we were just told, like, it was like, it's so hard to tell, like, what are you writing a chapter each? I can't tell, because it merges so well together. And we're like, well, that's from, going back over the last couple of years. But I know my style has definitely been, I suppose, influenced by Rachel, and possibly the same, we've influenced each other, I suppose. And some of it might be in dialogue, or some of it might be in descriptors or different things like that. But I know before, when I was on my own as a writer, and it goes back to, I suppose, my origins, because like that, I was writing little stories back when I was a kid, and then like I took the scenic route to writing. I was like the eternal student. I stayed on in academia. I've done the postdoctoral, so I've been a very analytical writer. And then I suppose with my love of like poetry, music, and the types of stories, different things that I read, my language was at one stage very flowery. and so I've learned to pull back and make it much more easier to read and more relatable. So I think, yeah, it's been a long road, but definitely the two of us writing together, it has kind of like there's a complement there now, which is great, I think.
That's awesome. I love that. All right, Steve, up to you.
Style doesn't matter as much to me. Most important thing when I'm working with a co-author is just that they are a good writer who can weave a good story and has good ideas and concepts. Typically speaking, I'm always the last pass on anything. I've been an editor my whole life, and being able to take a project from beginning to end and voice it throughout is something that I consider a strength of mine. And of course, co-authors have agreed. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be working with them. So whatever their style is, like, they've all sort of agreed, like, it becomes a joint style by the end. That's kind of Jamie Castle's voice, but it's always mixed with the flavor of that author that I'm working with. So the style doesn't matter as much as them being a good writer and a good storyteller.
Nice. I like that. Okay, so the next question I have for you guys, I think really kind of leads us in this transition to where, for those who are considering starting out in a co-authorship or interested, curious, with all of your guys' knowledge now that you have, how would you start out all over again? Or what is the best advice you could give these authors of, like, here's certain questions you should ask, here's how you should lay out your plan, so there's a great understanding going forward? And Steve, let's stay with you.
I could give you a lot of publishing advice on this more than writing. I don't know what you want from this, but something to keep in mind, and maybe this is the biggest thing for you to remember, is that with Amazon and Audible, only the first name listed in your metadata matters. The co-author gets no credit, gets no data, gets no benefit, quote unquote, from having published that book. So the answer is always put the biggest name first, because that's what's going to draw the crowd from Amazon's algorithms. And as much as we as authors want to think we sell books to readers, we don't. We sell books to machines that sell books to readers. And the readers you're able to reach is small in terms of the overall scope of like what we're going after. So like if you're thinking of starting out, weigh the benefits, the pros and cons of like the names you're working with. And I know this is not something people want to hear on a writers, but like it's the honest truth of publishing. It's just very important to realize that those choices don't go alphabetical, don't go ego, don't go any of that. Like the name that's first is the name that matters. And, you know, co-authors, you're probably not going to gain anything from co-authoring with a big name as far as a following. It can happen, but because of the algorithms, like you should be doing this because it's fun, not because you think, or because you could make a shit ton of money with the right author, but not to like, let me attach my name to this big name because then people might find me. That very rarely happens. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're making a decision to co-author. That's the biggest one in my opinion.
No, I think that's great, because I think that's something that probably would not have normally come up in a standard conversation like this, especially from your position, you know, owning Atheon. So that's awesome. Thank you. Aoife, let's jump down to you.
So for those starting out, I suppose if I was to go from just the working together kind of point of view, I think actually a friend of ours, an author friend, actually came kind of asking us for advice. They were thinking about going into co-authorship, but they were a bit nervous about it. So I think for those that mightn't be sure if they've been writing for quite some time on their own, a good idea is to maybe, if it works for you, to maybe start with something small, maybe like a novella or a lead magnet or something. So you can just kind of test the waters, see if you can kind of work things out over maybe like 20,000 words, would say, that you can kind of say, okay, that didn't work. Maybe we'll leave it at that. And then you can decide what to do with those words, or continue on. If you feel like it's working, then you have something there that's tangible. And that would be my first thoughts on that. So I don't know if that's any help.
No, that's awesome. I love that. So, and you know, I think from the novella standpoint, there's a lot of readers that are surging to novellas. And I think sometimes when you're starting out as an author, you don't even think, you know what, just start out small and build big. You think, you know, hey, I want to go big. So I love that advice. That's awesome. Rachel, let's kick it over to you.
So another thing to kind of consider is when you're starting out, and this process can go through when you're working on that novella, is, you know, setting your clear expectations up front. You know, what do you want? What do you both want from the experience? You know, what are your end goals? You know, kind of make sure you're on the same page, work in the ways that you work. So that would be one of the most important things. So who's going to be doing the writing? Is it going to be 50-50? How you're going to do the plotting? All those different types of things that need to be considered that go into just the book publishing process in general. And if you need to, like, the further along you go and it works out, then maybe you can start setting up something more official, like a document that kind of is more of a contract based as you move forward.
Awesome. I love that. All right, Damien, up to you.
I actually wrote out a document where I answered some expected questions, and this was one of them. And I'm rather sure most of the points were covered already. But let me refer here. Let me take a look through quick, see if I missed anything. I guess this feeds into talking about the novella, etc. I said before you dive into the actual writing with a prospective co-author, make sure that you sit down together and you world build and you figure out exactly what not only what the story is going to be, but where it's going to be set, so what kind of characters are going to be in there, because you want to make sure that you see eye to eye on all these crucial aspects of the story. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting about them later, and that's not going to be good for anybody.
Nice. I like that. Okay, let's see here. I'm looking at some of our questions that we have, and I'm looking down here at some of the ones I have to pick what would be a good one to.
A good question is that bicep one I see there.
Just many, many years of working out.
Who's someone you'd love
typing out all those typing out all those books. So yeah, that was actually the one I was going to go to next. So thanks, Steve. Go ahead and start us on that.
Jim Butcher. He's the only one I want to write with.
Why is that?
I love the Dresden Files. I love I wrote the Black Badge series, which was really just Harry Dresden in the Wild West. Not really. I mean, but that was the pitch. And I think that he's not writing anything like new, but like if I could write with Jim Butcher, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Nice. Okay. Rachel, let's go down to you.
So I am drawing a blank on who I'd want to write with. So it'd be someone in the fantasy genre, which is very vague, but I would say that tends to be where I spend most of my time in that genre reading things. If I think of someone, I will come back to that comment.
Okay, so then maybe not someone. Let's just switch it for you. Also, is there a certain world of someone else's that you would love to write in?
Star Trek.
That's true.
But I also want my book, so not Star Trek.
Well, I'll say the only thing that comes to mind is I'm a big fan of Keanu Reeves movies just in general. So I think writing in something that's in his world, like I think we watched a John Wick movie most recently, and that was a fun one. Lots of action happening. So I think.
Can you imagine how hard it would be to write John Wick? It's literally just gun moves, 4 vocal lines in the whole movie. It's
Gun through.
brutal.
It would be interesting, but anything that's kind of fast paced would be a lot of fun.
Okay, awesome. Damien, let's jump up to you.
Well, I want to say Matt Dinneman, but I find him intimidating because DCC is amazing. So I'm gonna, a lot of good ones, but one that really sticks out to me is Prime Verse, Rob Bilal. I would love to sit down with him and continue that universe because if I remember correctly, he stopped at 3 books on that one. But it was so visual, so vivid, just amazing. I loved it so much. And I would love to sit down with him and be like, okay, we need to keep this thing going.
Nice. Okay. And Aoife, down to you.
I'm going to go completely from, say, actual so novels. It's more graphic novels, and it's partially because of my love of art as well as when they were introduced. So my husband, like when we first met, there's a bit of a nostalgia. One of the first graphic novels he showed me was Preacher, so I'm a big fan of Garth Ennis and is it Steve Dillon's artwork? And I would love to kind of go in that, or maybe like Alan Moore's, From Hell or something like that, to go completely different, get a bit of the artistic, and the literary as well together all in one.
Nice. Okay. So I think one question Kyle has, and I know it's something that we briefly mentioned here in the panel. It's also been a major topic of all of Gildify Con, and I think with our authorship, is Kyle asked, is writing together like a pathway or more like a mountain climb with lots of pitfalls and ledges? And we've talked a lot on this panel about when you have that co-author who's there to help you during hard times. And so I'm curious, was there times when you were co-authoring when you could see there was something really affecting your fellow author that was like, you know what, this story is not as important as you, so let's just pause and let's take care of one another or help one another get through this personal time? And who wants to start us out on this one?
I will. I think that happens a lot, right? Like I've had co-authors. I had kids. I had 2 kids during the writing of the Buried Goddess saga with Rhett, and like that became Rhett going, I'll do more work on this project so that it continues moving forward. You do what you got to do. My wife's been really sick for the last year and a half, and so different projects take my co-author going, you do what you got to do. And then, you know, on the other end of the spectrum, Andy Peliquin lives in Canada. He was at my house for a 4-day weekend recently because his mother was having some surgery pretty close by me. And I was like, if she's going to be in the hospital and you're not going to be there, why don't you come up here? Let me give you a little bit of a mental break. We sat around drinking whiskey and talking about stuff. And so like there's a good co-authorship is a good friendship. And if you don't have an understanding of what a good friendship is, which is putting the other person first, like you're never going to be a good co-author. You're just going to be a good co-worker.
Man, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Rachel, let's jump down to you.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, I think you put it so well. That's one of the big things is having that support, not only in the book business side of things, but in just daily life. It's fortunate for both Eve and I. We both have families that we take care of with kids. And so having to balance both kind of our co-authoring type stuff as well as our day-to-days with families and taking care of our kids, that was one of the things that we wanted to strive for in kind of our own expectations and setting it up so that way we knew that we could support each other in both directions.
Aoife, over to you.
Yeah, just echoing again what's been said. So, yeah, I mean, from my own perspective, yeah, I mean, probably the start of this year, and I had some last year, some illnesses, either myself or kind of close family members that, you know, kind of it did affect how I wrote. I have 2 children who have additional needs as well. And so no 2 day, like you can plan to a certain amount, and Rachel is definitely, you know, my rock, and she plans things so well. But even no matter how well we plan things out, what we've had to learn to do as well is kind of put extra buffer time in. So if we're getting somebody to edit something, we might say, yeah, we might have that ready in however many weeks. But if, like what has happened a couple of times where, you know, something struck out of the blue and we have a couple of weeks where what we're writing slows way down, and it usually could be just either we're sick or the children are sick. I was just like, this house is like a plague house, like for about the month of January, I would say. And so very little could be done in that month. So yeah, we just kind of, you know, we also kind of like pick up for the other person, I think, as well. Like, so it's like, you're finding it tricky this week, I'm going to do an extra bit here and there. And it's just a kind of a, you know, like swings and roundabouts. We just both look after each other, and there's never any kind of pressure, you know, or that we don't understand. And I think it is very important to have that, you know, that kind of shared understanding.
Awesome. Damien, up to you.
Yeah, absolutely the same story. Whenever problems come up, we are very understanding with each other, and not just understanding, that would be just a coworker thing. We sit down and we talk through problems and comfort and support. Like my son, he had a stroke in first grade, and so he's a TBI kid. And so he sometimes gets really sick with migraines that'll just kind of just take him out of commission. And you know, at times like those, I'm just not available for any sort of work at all. And sometimes it gets emotional too, and you talk with each other, and when that happens to me, he's there. He's there to support me and get my morale up, keep things moving. And I think that is the story. I think that's all of our stories here. Like that's what happens.
Nice. So I'm curious, did any of you actually do live writing sessions together where you would open up a Google Doc and, hey, let's live write together and let's have some fun? So did you ever do that and experiment? And then the other part is editing. What I'm really curious of is when you send it to an editor, did you guys decide this is the editor we want to use? And then once that editor's done with the manuscript and send it back, who took the responsibility of going through it? Or did you also split that up? So Damien, let's stay with you.
It's a lot of questions at once. I'll go with the editing first, because we both go through the editing, and also Royal Road goes through it too, and Patreon. Like the fans are so big on that. So many people go through the editing that I'm not even sure how to answer it at this point. Everyone has a hand in it. What was the first part of that one?
Did you ever experiment with live writing where you guys would load up a Google document and actually write together at the same time?
We did a bit of that at first, but I know it gets like we generally when we did that, we were doing it in Google Docs, and things would sometimes freeze up as the document got longer, and also there's a tendency for things to hop around, so you always want to be on top. So we don't do a lot of live writing anymore.
That's what she said.
Final day at the con. You gotta love it. Awesome.
Name your sex tape.
Buy Mort After Dark. Is that what that's called?
Yeah, that's going to be the follow-up series.
Love it. Steve, let's jump over to you because you have a lot more experience here. Many authors.
Free writing together sounds like the chaos that I have no interest in being a part of whatsoever. If you had a good experience, more power to you. But like I couldn't. I don't even use Google Docs. I refuse. I refuse to use anything that's sort of web based, and I can accidentally lose shit that I wrote. And so I write in Pages. Or I write on a Remarkable tablet. I write by hand a lot. And so all of the processes involved in co-writing with guys and girls has been, we combine things as we go. With Red, it's a little easier because I write a chapter, I give it to him. He demolishes that chapter, just writes into it, changes everything, sends it back. It's just a whole big process. As a matter of fact, writing with Red is not faster than writing my own book in any way, shape, or form. It's actually probably twice as hard. There's sort of a different process with everyone that I've worked with, but thankfully no one I work with has pushed me to Google Docs, so I've never really done it. As far as editing, I told you I'm kind of the final edit pass as well as writing the book. So like I go through that whole thing, and because I'm an editor, like it's just editing is in my blood. So like it's pretty clean by the time we get to the end of it. And then because we have Athon, we don't argue about it because it's I have a team of editors that we just give it to one of them and tell them to do magic.
Nice. Okay, Aoife, let's go down to you.
So just start with the live writing. Yeah, we tried. I think it was on our third book. We were basically doing dictation, and so we started after everything I went through earlier in the year. It was like, right, I have to get my brain to work and try this to see, because I was doing like say writing sprints, different things, and I was on a bit of a time crunch. So and so we would go on a live call together, and we'd go on mute and I was going to say like typing away, but basically do our dictations, see what word, see how much progress we made at the end. Eventually, because it was kind of my evening and Rachel's morning, we started to, I'm a morning person. If I'm doing a first draft, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning is my time after a coffee. So we started to kind of try around different things, and we decided that we would outline chapters at that time of the day. So we would still do stuff live, but we wouldn't do drafts live now. We'd basically plan out the chapters of what we're going to write. And we'll get some kind of funny dictation stuff, like sometimes some characters or quips will come up, that sort of thing. I might let Rachel answer the other parts. I can't even remember what they were. Yeah.
I don't remember the other parts, but I'll just carry on. So, yeah, it was a fun process so far, kind of like going through the trial and error of like what's working best for our schedules and our time, using it wisely. We do, like Aoife mentioned, the live plotting, and so it's really nice to kind of have that nice dialogue, banter back and forth, brainstorming. We're spitballing off of each other to really kind of develop the story and saying what the characters might do in those situations. And we do use Google Docs and Sheets for spreadsheets, kind of tracking our world building, having that organization. We use something called ClickUp that really helps with that as well. And we do read each other's stuff whenever we edit. So if she starts off with the first half of dictation, and then I'll come in and do a second half of that chapter for dictation. And then we'll just read what each other have done and edit it. And then after that, once it's kind of in more of a finalized doc, we'll both go through sometimes at the same time. And also after a beta or our editor has kind of gone through it, we'll just go through and do live editing that way while we're on the call.
That's what I was wondering, because I was thinking about it. I was like, man, when that manuscript comes back from editing, whatever they're editing could really have an impact. And so having both of you look at those edits seems like it would be an important process. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that definitely comes in handy, especially like if we go through a beta read, because there might be some more things developmentally that we want to touch on and we can add that way.
And then at least for you guys, Rachel and Aoife, did you already know like who you wanted to have as an editor? And even Damien, did you know who you wanted to have as an editor? Had you already worked with them and it was like, this is the person we both equally trust?
Yeah, so we were fortunate, like in the writing group, to get a recommendation. So we were very happy with our editor to go ahead. We did try one or two, I think, kind of along the way, and like I would have initially started on my own with an Irish editor that was more traditionally focused and didn't necessarily know my genre. I learned a lot from her. But then when I was working or started co-authoring with Rachel, then we got the opportunity to kind of get on the books on the schedule. Like say she's about 3 months ahead, and we've gone through a whole series that way. Yeah. So
nice. Damien, up to you. What about you? How did you and Joseph figure out the editor piece that you wanted to go for?
Well, it was rather easy because there's somebody in our group. Like that's a lot of times. Yeah, you know how that works. Like you have your author group and everyone's reading everybody else, and then it's just I mean you give jobs to friends a lot of times if you can.
Well, it's also a great technique for editors. If it's like, oh yeah, I'm in this writing group. Hey, I could help you with this. So,
yeah, it definitely is.
Great strategy. Okay, awesome. So we're coming close to the end of our time. So I guess any final thoughts, comments, suggestions that you would have for our audience on the co-authorship process? And Steve, let's go ahead and start with you.
I have a fun story. Can I tell a quick story?
Absolutely.
Rhett's done this to me twice now. Rhett has 2 kids, and he likes to tell me in the book that we're writing. So the first time it happened, we were really closely in sync with each other on the writing, editing, write in. We call it writing in, right? You take 2,000 words that somebody else wrote and you do a really heavy edit on it and change whatever you want. Neither of us can argue if somebody decides they want to change something. So I'm going through something he wrote, and in big capital letters, Elise is pregnant. And I mean, I was stunned, speechless. That was his first kid. The second time he did it, my wife, I told you, she's got chronic Lyme disease, so she's like, there's a period where she's in bed for just months at a time. And so I had both kids, and I'm like, I'm stressed to the max, and I finally catch up. He had written Elise is pregnant 8 weeks before I got to it. And I finally called him. I'm like, Elise is pregnant? He's like, yeah, dude, that's really old. I've just been waiting for you to get there.
Oh, you know what? That's such a funny way. I definitely have to remember that for later on of how to do that, add that in. So that's awesome. Aoife, any final comments, suggestions that you have?
I suppose, given the whole, so you go in there, you do the writing and everything, but don't lose sight, don't lose sight of the fact of, the fun element of it as well. So, obviously, I've heard many times about, treating, what you're doing as a business, and I totally get that, but you have the opportunity to forge a great relationship. If it works, it's great. Do have fun and celebrate your success, I think.
Love that. Damien, up to you.
I guess for my last bit here, I'm going to reiterate a point that Steve made before, because I ran into this in the past. Whenever you do co-author with somebody, make sure you leave your ego at the door. I want to re-emphasize that, because that's such a huge thing. Most people, especially newer writers, they think that everything they write is amazing, and they do not want anything to be changed. And you need to get over that. So if you're going to co-author, check that in.
That's awesome. Great advice. Rachel, down to you.
So just to add, so I'm not repeating what y'all are saying, but using the opportunity to co-author with someone to really kind of learn and grow from each other and try and build each other up, because that's kind of the whole process. You want to lift each other up as you kind of move forward. You may be open to trial and error, be flexible, and continue with that support. And like y'all are saying, have fun with the whole process.
Awesome. Well, you guys, I don't really see any more questions coming in. So for those watching, if you do have a final question, put it up there. We do have a few minutes. So let's go ahead finally around the room. Remind everyone where they can find you, what work you're currently working on or super excited about, whether it's yours or someone else's. So Aoife, let's start down at the bottom. We'll work our way to the top.
You can find me in my dungeon, Anna.
I do love your background. I'm not going to lie.
You don't want to know what's behind. So this is my home office, it's my husband works from home as well. He's not here. I just feel like it's getting darker and darker in here. And I can't reach the light. So you can find me with Rachel on Amazon. I'd say the links are somewhere. We are on www.unchartedbloodlines.com. We're also on Royal Road now, again with that same handle. Hunter Origins is the story that's gone live. And I'll let Rachel pick up anything that I've missed.
That wasn't some kind of veiled cry for help, right? It's getting.
It actually started to sound like that.
Reach the light.
I know.
So
I
was
like, there's something kind of darkly poetic about that. Yeah, no, I just mean literally, not figuratively, but.
Oh my gosh. All right, Rachel.
Very ominous. I think you covered it all pretty well. I think I'm glitching out a little bit, but we do have our third book in the series, Wolf and Flames, coming out within next month. And like Aoife said, you can find us on the website. And if you want to check out the Royal Road of Hunter Origins, that came out today.
Awesome. Congrats on the launch. And also, when are you going to be selling those beautiful handmade canvas prints behind you?
So I have been asked someone could buy this before they're walking by my house. It's a one of a kind, so it's very limited.
I mean, it's also a little creepy to know that people are walking by your house looking in and now wanting to buy your stuff. So
Yes, that's true. You can kind of see there's the handprint here. It's, one of my best friends and I like got out there and like just rolled around in the paint.
That's awesome. All right, Damien, up to you.
And not too many places to go. We're up on Amazon, of course. Find it at just type in Bymort, it'll pop up for you. You can find Bymort also on Royal Road. We have Patreon called Scani's Books. That's actually from a while back. That name, like, there's a story behind it, but no time to talk about it now. And then I have a Substack as well. I moved over from my main website to the Substack after I realized I couldn't keep up with my article a day thing that I was trying to do. I was kind of wrecking myself doing that, and I needed to stop. So I moved over to Substack, and you can find that there. Damien Hansen and Friends, and find my stuff there. And I put out an article maybe once a month now, if you want to check those out.
That's awesome. Great stuff. All right, Steve.
You can find me on jamiecastle.com. I'm on all the social medias as well and not hard to find. Athonbooks.com if you want to kind of know what I'm doing as far as a publisher goes. I have 2 series ongoing right now. I have one called Harrier, but first book is Justice. It's a superhero series, which advice, don't write superheroes. They're really hard to sell. And then I've also got a massive epic fantasy series with Andy Peliquin called Dragon Blood Assassin. I am finishing up book 4 before Vegas this year. I'm at 200,000 words and probably way too much more to go. But that's the end of the series. And I'm that feeling you get when you're like just about to finish this series or the book or whatever. I've been sitting on that for about a month and a half now because the book just keeps getting longer to finish the series, and we want it done. So that's where I'm at right now.
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited you're going to be in Vegas too, because I'm looking forward to hanging out. So Great stuff, you guys. And the final question in the panel from Rachel Nee Kirk, the imposter of who I am. I'm just putting out good vibes to the universe, yo. You put out good vibes to the universe, it's going to give you back cupcakes and sunshine and rainbows. So there we go. All right. Well, I think that's it for our panel. Thank you so much to those of you who have tuned in to Guildify Con. If you do have other more specific questions for co-authorship, be sure to go to the Discord where we have a channel dedicated to this panel. You can ask questions there, and we will be sure to get them to our amazing authors. So once again, as we sign off, thank you so much to Steve, Damien, Aoife, and Rachel for joining me. This has been an absolute pleasure to be in your awesome company. So thank you so much. All right, now slow wave.
Oh, my hand is broken here.
And then we just wait for Geneva to